back, and he was very angry. And he succeeded through the king in undoing it. And the row was so great that the king appointed the Viscount Abercorn to mediate in this row and sort it out, because it was shaking Ulster. Shaking the whole place.
But I don't think, I mean, in defence of Montgomery, I don't think he went behind Hamilton's back. I think he was just an enterprising young man who decided...
Yes, they were both enterprising young men. They both were go-getters. But when Abercorn, you see, then investigated the thing, and he found for Hamilton, not Montgomery. It was pointed out afterwards, of course, that his family name was Hamilton, and they're for cousins anyway. So I'm not suggesting that justice was necessarily done. But the fact is that Hamilton came off and scored against Montgomery. And that's why Montgomery forbade any of his daughters ever to marry Hamilton.
So, wandering around the rooms of Grey Abbey, I suddenly discovered a gravestone, and on it was written, "Here lieth James Hamilton, married to James Montgomery, so 1636." And this was pretty soon after James Hamilton and Hugh Montgomery died, and I'm really wondering just how that managed to be.
Well, I must tell you that there were 6 brothers of the first Hamilton here, and they all came over to Northern Ireland, and they were all given land by their elder brother. And I have no doubt that if they weren't married, they were all younger than he was, that they probably had a few progeny who were not accounted for in the proper register of the family. And I've no doubt that it's one of those people who would have married a Montgomery, you know.
Listening to Colonel Rowan Hamilton and my father take such pleasure in their ancestors' story, I can't help thinking about the legacy left by the hundreds of men and women who followed them in 1606 to the relatively barren lands of Antrim and Down. The language and the culture of those first Scottish settlers lives on in stories and songs handed down from generation to generation. The McAvoys were a true Ulster Scots family who lived in a small cottage on Mid-Island, part of what little remains of the Montgomery estate. When Willie McAvoy was born, his grandfather was a shore herd in charge of the coastline around the area, and it was here that as a boy, Willie learned the Ulster Scots language almost without realising it.
So this cottage where you grew up?
Yeah, that's where I grew up.
Oh, wow. And was it your grandma that taught you the Ulster Scots language?
My granny, I would say, taught me to talk, and it was Ulster Scot. But I didn't know I talked Ulster Scots till I was townless. That's only about 10, 12 or 14 years ago. They started to realise that there was something in this. It was like a language. Well, some will say it's a dialect, but...
Well, it is, and it's, you know, I think it's the closest we have to what the Ulster Scots would have spoken in 1606.
Oh, aye. That's right. I would go occasionally across to Scotland there, to Dumfries and Galloway, and like if people that I know just talk the same as I talk.
It's fantastic.
They're just the same.
It's exactly the same language as we would have had in 1606. What are the main keynotes of the Ulster Scots language?
If I could, I would, and if I couldn't, who could I? Yes,
and what words like oxters, are those Ulster Scots words?
Oxter, below your oxter, your armpits.
Absolutely. And cogley? Cogley?
Cogley, not unsteady.
Exactly. Cogley. And so it's amazing that it stayed alive, because when you went to school, you weren't allowed to speak Ulster Scots, were you?
No. It was frowned upon. You got slapped.
Really?
You used to get slapped in school in my day. They don't talk that way. That's wrong.
And do you think it's growing? There's been a massive interest.
Oh, it definitely has. It's a good thing. Well, maybe there's arguments that it's not a language, but it's still worth saving.
Fortunately for the Ulster Scots tradition, Willie McAvoy isn't the only one who feels that way. In July 2006, Rosemount became the venue for an event to mark the 400th anniversary of James Hamilton and Hugh Montgomery's arrival, celebrating the influence on Ulster of all things Scottish, including, apparently, the weather.
In other words, it's Hamilton and Montgomery are the boys who should get all the credit, or all the blame, depending on how you look at it, you know. 1, 2, 3, 4.
think the traditional music from Scotland is clearly identifiable in the way people play fiddles in County Antrim and County Down.
For the same body lass, will you come with me to share your love with a strange country?
The Ulster Scots loved the bagpipes, being Scottish, and they always tried to imitate the bagpipes on any instrument they played. So they played two strings on the fiddle, and they added the fifth string to the banjo to get that constant drone to imitate the bagpipes.
Bells and bonny bloom, we have our bells and rivers on the banner of the hills take out.
One of the main differences in Ulster is the fact that the marching band tradition has led to an awful lot of march tunes. People play the fiddle and tin whistle and the accordions. They're quite often the same people who were in the marching bands, and so the tunes would quite often be played a little bit different here. I think because I left Northern Ireland for a period of time, I was actually out of Northern Ireland for 21 years. It was really then that I started to think about my heritage. So I think quite often you have to leave where you grew up to really appreciate the culture that you have.
I think it's true to say that the story of Hamilton, Montgomery and the first settlers from Ayrshire was lost or obscured because of the conflicts and controversy surrounding the subsequent years of the plantation. Rediscovering this fascinating history adds a new dimension to our understanding of why the Scots came to Ulster in the first place.
The Hamilton-Montgomery 400th anniversary is the beginning of a whole series of anniversaries. There's going to be, the 400th anniversary of the Flight of the Earls in 2007, Plantation of Ulster 2010. And what's so significant about these 400th anniversaries is that for the first time in 400 years, the planter and the Gael, the settler and the native, may only now finally, after 400 years, be arriving at a political settlement.
Personally, I've been truly fascinated by the story of the settlements of 1606 and delighted that they have been rediscovered. It was a chance for many to start a new life and regenerate part of a war-ravaged land. Those who followed may have had less charity and sometimes sought to dispossess rather than befriend their neighbours. But hopefully today we're in a position to learn from the past and build a better future.
It's been a very moving and humbling experience finding out more about my ancestor, Hugh Montgomery. I knew very little about him before I started all of this, and it's been a really exciting journey. And bringing the whole story of the Ulster Scots alive through the people we've met along the way, through the music of Willie Drennan, through the language of Will McAvoy, through all these wonderful people. I hope after 400 years this is a fitting celebration for the achievements of Hamilton, Montgomery and the Ulster Scots.